Hello. From Portugal, I welcome you all to our session of Clean Energy and Sustainable Oceans, a path towards the future. I am the local network chair of the board, and it's my honor to address some opening remarks. Many thanks to you all for viewing and participating in this exciting moment of exchange of valuable information and opinions from Portuguese experts about climate action and ocean protection. To our speakers, I also thank for our invitation's acceptance. As we face unprecedented challenges with the social and economic impacts of the coronavirus pandemic, climate change remains one of the most pressing issues of our times. Global efforts to recover the economy must go hand in hand with a net zero capable of creating new jobs, products, and services without depleting the Earth's resources. For Portugal, this commitment with a sustainable future has a strong focus on clean and renewable energy and ocean health in order to develop and reinforce green and blue economy, creating valuable opportunities to our market. Part of this session aims to address specifically the ocean challenges due to our geographical, historical, and economic relations with the Atlantic. As Global Compact Network Portugal, we strive to implement the United Nations Secretary-General priorities that rely on the pressing issues of climate, gender equality, and the global goals. Keeping in mind that all sustainable development goals are equally important, we decided to focus on climate change to reach net zero emissions by 2030, gender equality, and the 2030 Agenda. Through United Nations Global Compact general programs, we fully involve the leaders of large corporations and enterprises of all sizes in the applications of real and effective decisions to reach the SDGs by the scheduled time, leaving no one behind. The United Nations Global Compact Portugal network is now a path to the world, both for our business and public institutions. Through this United Nations organization, we promote the dialogue with experts and entrepreneurs all over the world, giving our knowledge and profiting also of the advances in similar fields. As a business-led initiative, our purpose is applied knowledge and applying science to create a global impact, to do specific changes, to launch innovative offers, to measure key indicators, and react to improve SDGs implementation. Thank you all for being part of this and part of the beautiful Kofi Annan's vision for this initiative. Allow me to take this opportunity to greet our dear Liz King. She will be forever in our hearts. To the soon new Executive Director, Sanda Ojiambo, we wish all the best, being ready here in Portugal in our network to fully cooperate and support her leadership. Now, it's my pleasure and my honor to welcome Alexander Farson, member of the Steering Committee Science-Based Target Initiative, who will facilitate our first panel on clean energy. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you. A warm welcome. And thank you so much for the invitation by the UN Global Compact to speak today. Let me start by saying happy birthday. What a great achievement to have 20 years of Global Compact and 20 years of uniting the private sector in driving the change that we want to see in the world. And what I'm going to speak a little bit about today is how companies can show leadership by following what the science tells us is necessary to limit the effects of climate change and to make sure that we have a planet that works for everybody that works in the benefit of people and nature. And I will start by talking about a campaign that we have been running with our friends at the UN Global Compact and We Mean Business, and it's called Business Ambition for 1.5C. And what is the context to this? As Mário explained very well, climate change is undoubtedly the defining issue of our time. It's a collective action that we have to take to address climate change and its effects. And really now we are at a pivotal moment. In 2015, we came together as a global society and decided that we're going to do what is necessary to stop climate change and to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And understanding what that means really was up to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, so the global body that brings together all the science. And within the Paris Agreement, we actually enshrined two goals. It's warming of 1.5C or well below 2C. And we need to understand what is the difference between the two and why is it important that we aim for 1.5. And I think the report really conclusively showed by bringing together the latest science that every half degree makes a world of difference. And it makes a world of difference for people, for their exposure to extreme weather events, to heat waves, for their livelihoods that depend on the planet, on nature, agricultural yields, etc. And also for the economy writ large. We understood that it has a huge impact on how we operate as humans and how we live together as humans, whether we limit global warming to 1.5C or not. And it's going to make a difference for nature, for some of the most vulnerable ecosystems that we already are seeing being impacted by climate change. And that is, I think, one of the key messages is that we're already seeing the impact of climate change around the world, and we're seeing what an impact it can have on billions of people's lives. And the idea is that we must limit global warming to 1.5C to avoid the worst impacts that we're going to see. And the message here then really is that business as usual is no longer an option. When you look at where we are aiming for today in terms of policies and the way we operate our economy, heavily reliant on fossil fuels, heavily reliant on transforming land, it's clear that we're aiming for global warming of 3 degrees with potentially catastrophic effects for the planet and people. And what it means is that we really need to radically reduce our greenhouse gas emissions that drive climate change. And who needs to be at the forefront of leading this is business, is the private sector, with a responsibility for a large majority of greenhouse gas emissions in the world, and also a unique ability to drive innovations to limit climate change and to reduce emissions around the world. And what that means in practice is that companies need to halve emissions by 2030. They need to cut their emissions in half by 2030 and reach net zero emissions well before 2050. The only way we can really stop climate change from becoming worse is to stop adding emissions to the atmosphere. And that's what we need to do by 2050, the latest, is what we understand from the IPCC. And what that means is reducing emissions not only in your operations, but also the emissions from your products and your supply chain. And this has to happen at an unprecedented pace and scale. And to give you an understanding of why it's so important to not only look at your operations, but also at your products and supply chains, just think about your household. When you think about what it means to have a low carbon lifestyle and to think about what your impact you have on the planet, it's not enough to just think about your electricity and how you heat your home. It's also important to think about what you're buying, what you eat, how you travel. And this is what we're asking of companies. You need to really reduce your impact across your entire value chain, as we say. And the good news is that we already have the tools available to make this transition. We understand what technologies we need to deploy. For some technologies, like solar energy, like battery storage, they are already price competitive. We already know that a successful business can be centered around using those technologies. For some others, like the low carbon hydrogen economy, we know the direction of travel and we know what we have to deploy in terms of infrastructure, in terms of R&D investment. And this is really where we need to see leadership from companies of aiming their business in the right direction and leveraging their capacity to making that transition possible. That transition to a net zero economy where we stop having an economy that lives at the expense of the planet. And the good news is that this actually will save us money. It's not a question of trade-offs. It's a question of leveraging this transition that we know can happen in a way that benefits all of us and needs to be a just transition. And some of the estimates that we have is that taking climate action compared to our business usual path will save us $26 trillion worldwide by 2030. So it's a no-brainer business decision to follow this path. And to emphasize this and to gather voices and gather a movement of the private sector support this ambition, in 2019, a global network of organizations, including the UN Global Compact, including the SBTI, came together and called on businesses and industry leaders to join this movement and asked for them to act. And this is how companies have responded. Hundreds of companies have joined the Business Ambition for 1.5C campaign. And at this point, we have over 242 global companies that have joined, and there's a lot of huge global companies involved. It's 3.8 trillion in market cap that they account for, so a really significant share of global stock markets. They employ 7.4 million people, so they are providing livelihoods to people while making this transition. And it's a global movement. They're from 44 countries, so we're really seeing this global watershed moment where the private sector is taking responsibility and showing the leadership that we understand we need. So how can a company join this Business Ambition for 1.5C campaign? There's really two options, and I'm not going to go into too much of the technical detail here, but one of them is setting science-based emission reduction targets through the SBTI. This is what we do. We translate climate science for the case of individual companies to help them understand how much and how fast they have to reduce. And setting those targets across the entire value chain to reduce emissions in line with 1.5C. And when you sign up to the campaign, you do have 24 months to figure out, with our help, what it means to make these reductions. What do you have to cover with your target boundary, and how much do you have to reduce, how quickly? And this is really to ensure the strongest level of ambition in the near term, because we know that we have to halve emissions by 2030. So we need to align our pathways in the near term to make sure that we don't emit more carbon than we can to limit global warming to 1.5C. The second option, which is aligning your targets with the science-based targets criteria, and we do also acknowledge targets that are set against the second goal that's enshrined within the Paris Agreement, well below 2C, but then make a commitment to net zero emissions by 2050. So seeing that maybe some sectors have a different gliding path in the near term, but also having a strong commitment to bending the curve to net zero by 2050, to understand that there has to be a fundamental transformation by 2050 or mid of century of how you operate your business and moving away from greenhouse gas emissions as a reflection of how you operate your business. And in the near term, reducing emissions in line with well below 2C. So we're hoping that these two approaches really give some flexibility for businesses to start recognizing where is it that they fit in, how can they make their contribution to this pathway that we know we have to globally achieve. And we're once again calling on businesses to join us in this movement. 2020 is a critical year for increasing ambition. It's 5 years after the Paris Agreement. We know that at the next Conference of Parties, the COP in Glasgow, we need to show that there's an increase in ambition globally by countries, but also by businesses and other non-state actors. And it's really now that we're asking you to join us and send that strong signal. But of course, mentioning the COP in Glasgow also brings forward another thing that's become critical in this year 2020. It's the COVID-19 crisis that has really rattled globally and caused a tragic amount of lives and continues to have a strong impact on our economy. And what is a conclusion or an implication of this crisis, this tragedy, is that we are seeing strong investment from government to at least soften and mitigating the economic damage that is happening across the world. And it's critical that we're using this as a moment to also reflect on how we want to recover, what does it mean for the economy to recover? And it's critical here that we don't recover in a way that brings us back to the old business as usual pathway, but recover better, recover in a way that lets us transition to low carbon economy and make those investments now that will let us transition in a way that recognizes the importance of the health of people and the health of the environment, and lets us set the stepping stones now for this transition that we have to do over the next 30 years. And over 155 companies have already joined us in making a call to governments to have a recovery that includes ambitious climate action. So again, businesses have been stepping up with us and have been a strong voice in asking governments to not only look at recovery, but recovery that also takes into account this other major crisis that we continue to face, which is the climate crisis. And we've been asking businesses to join the statement with us, and again, 155 have. And it really is about the idea that we need to bounce back in a way that works for all of us, and that works in a way that respects the climate. And we ask you here to also join us in the statement. And I think that is all I wanted to cover today. As the respectable Secretary General has said himself, now is really the time that we need more companies to join the movement and send this clear signal to policymakers, to the market, that this is the transition that we're on. And I'm now going to hand over to my friend Pedro from CDP to moderate the first panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, for your presentation on the business ambition for 1.5 campaign and the Recover Better statement, two very important leadership commitments from business at the current moment. I also want to say happy birthday to the Global Compact Network for its 20 years, successful 20 years, and wishing for very successful also next 20 years. Good morning to all. My name is Pedro Faria. I'm an advisor at CDP, the Global Environmental Reporting Platform, and I will be moderating the next panel on clean energy. Clean energy is a fundamental pillar for the decarbonization of industrialized economies, but also key for the low carbon development of non-industrial and post-industrial economies. Today, with the COVID-19 crisis, we are faced with local choices on how to restart our economies, which will have profound global implications on our future. Last week, the IEA reported on the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on clean energy progress. And I want to highlight three of their conclusions as a way to frame also the panel that we are going to have. The first is that the pandemic is having a major impact on energy systems around the world, not only temporarily reducing emissions, but also curbing investments and threatening to slow the expansion of key clean energy technologies. The second is that the correct deployment of COVID stimulus plans on energy efficiency, on clean energy, on clean innovation and policies is needed to meet our climate ambitions, as Alex also mentioned. And third, that tackling the world's climate challenge and accelerating clean energy transition needs pre-competitive collaboration at very large scale. In the words of the IEA, we need a grand coalition encompassing everyone who is genuinely committed to reducing emissions. And this encompasses governments, industry, investors, civil society to share innovative ideas, best practices, and inspire one another with greater ambition. And that's also what we are here today to do. share innovative ideas and best practice and inspires one another. And I'm very happy to have with us to discuss this important theme a distinguished panel, which I will now introduce. So I want to welcome Clara Costa. Clara is a member of the executive board of Auchan Retail Portugal and responsible for directing the execution of brand and transformation, where corporate responsibility is included. Clara has been with Auchan and food retail for the past 12 years, always connected with communications and CSR, a theme that has always been strategic for the company. She has a degree in law by the Faculty of Law in Lisbon and an MBA. The cultural transformation of companies and their brands is the challenge where Clara is mainly focused nowadays. Good morning, Clara. I also want to welcome Isabel. Hi, Clara. Yes, you can join us. I also want to welcome Isabel Fortado, CEO of TMG Automotive, part of the family-owned company TMG, a group with over 80 years of industrial experience, and also president of Compact Portugal, an association promoting innovation and technological cooperation between Portuguese companies and that is part of the national innovation system. Good morning, Isabel, and welcome. And finally, I want to welcome José Sardinha. José is an environmental engineer by training, vice president of Águas Portugal, president of the board of FAO and Águas do Alto. Is also an invited assistant professor at Faculdade de Ciências e Tecnologia da Universidade Nova de Lisboa. Good morning, José, and welcome to the panel.
Good morning.
Good morning. And I think we are just missing Clara. And
good morning.
Good morning, Clara, and welcome. So I'm going to make a general question for the panel, and maybe we can start with you, Clara, and then go to Isabel and then to José. Considering the Sustainable Development Goals, how material is energy for your company, namely as a source of greenhouse gas emissions? And what are the main opportunities and barriers for adoption of a 100% clean energy goal in your company?
Well, first of all, thank you for this invitation. It's a great pleasure to be among the great warriors of climate action. And of course, thank you for Global Compact for the opportunities to share a little bit of our work around the climate action. In first place, usually we don't. When we think in climate action, we think in the industry, but the retail has a huge responsibility also in what we can do about reducing our impact. In Auchan, as we are the 11th retailer in the world and the 35th employer, we have a huge role to have in reducing this impact. But of course, when we think all over the world in our activity, our material, it's not identified. I think the first one is not the climate action, but perhaps it is equal with the fight and the well-being and the health. But first of all, I would like to say that when we think in retail and we think in stores and in digital stores, and we are always thinking how we can propose a solution with a minor impact in the environment. And in the last 10 years, we changed our business from a solution more around hypermarkets for convenience stores that already can balance the offer to the client for this proximity with their homes and their jobs. With COVID, what we also observed is that people and clients are now using hypermarkets as there are a more large space where they can buy with more security and not with so much clients. So we have here a challenge to balance how they can make their shopping and to plan their shopping in the huge shops and also the convenience stores. There is a great challenge. After that, I think that what the companies should do is to begin the work inside. And for Auchan, the first step is look with the teams what we can do. And usually the solutions became from the teams, and their engagement is the first step to achieve all the goals. So, and after, it's very important for us that these kind of goals are also communicated by the brand, and that the client can recognize what we are doing. That's why our vision is the same as our brand. And if you get inside the company, you can see that the vision is to be good, health, and local. And our brand is also to be good, great, healthy, and local. So it is very important that it is the same message. About our material, and that was your question. Our first one, of course, is about food and about good health and well-being. But and of course the responsible consumption and production. But when we think about consumption and the production, we always think about the first thought is for supply chain. And of course, supply chain is really linked to climate action and their impact on emission, and of course linked to buy affordable and clean energy. So we work the 17 goals, but of course we have identified the main. And if the first one could be food and good health and well-being, after that we have climate action and affordable and clean energy. And even in our management tools or strategy tool that we use, like the balance scorecard, one of the strategic goal is to be a responsible enterprise. And the KPIs, the strategic KPIs are about footprint. What is our footprint? Which are our engagement and our goals? The other one is about the plastic, of course, and the energy consumption. So that is the role that the management and the strategic tools achieve in the enterprise to get all the enterprise to achieve these goals. Of course, we have some obstacles. But and the obstacles could the first one, of course, in certain areas are the investments and some costs, but usually the payback it's positive. So we have to get decisions that could are always good to the enterprise, but also for the client, because the client is very exigent, and he recognizes also as a stakeholder which the enterprise could be better for all the world. Of course, we have an objective to reduce 20% of our footprint since 218 to 222, reducing 20%, and we also signed the business to reduce 1.5 degrees, and we are engaged to that. Of course, there is also an opportunity, and I think perhaps after I could give some examples of positive results about some opportunities that we take about the environment that result in great achievements to the enterprise, to the teams, and also to the client.
Thank you, Clara. Isabel, over to you for the same question, on the same question.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and for the opportunity to join such an important event and share some of the experience of TMG. TMG, as you said, is a privately family-owned company with over 80 years old. We are an industrial company. So, of course, energy is one of our major issues. Because we depend on the supply from the national grid, we cannot control the source of energy for their energy producing, so we're not controlling what type of energy you receive. However, we do know that amongst our suppliers, some have cleaner energy production than others. And actually, Portugal is doing very well. The Portuguese national grid is a good example of clean energy production. And not so long ago, Portugal managed to go on to 4 consecutive days with the use of just renewable energy source. And that is very important. We actually met the zero emissions target producing energy. And this should be an example to follow. This is a challenge for TMG too. Right now, we are on the process of quantifying our CO2 emissions, which by itself, as you can imagine, is a difficult task. We need, and why we need to do this? Because we need to know exactly where we stand and define where we want to go, and then how much we need to improve. And only then can we have a measurable plan, follow it, and evaluate our progress. So last year, TMG assigned the business ambition for 1.5 degrees, and now we are committed, and we are fully committed towards carbon neutrality by 2050. As a company, we have just invested, and we are in the middle of a big investment in solar energy production. So towards the end of the year, we should have 10% of our energy coming from our photovoltaic park. The only thing that was a bit of a drawback was because of COVID. As you said, COVID has slowed down not just the investment on cleaner energy for a lot of people, because there was a massive shutdown of the industry, but also because companies were shut down and they weren't able to supply us as fast as we needed. But also as important as having a good supply of clean energy, inside TMG also has to have a very efficient use of that same energy. And how do we do this? We have to think very detail of our process optimization. How we produce is extremely important, not just for the energy we consume, but also for the emissions we put out. In our buildings have to be smart. We have to use as many daylight as possible. I'm in a building with 2 big windows. I'm using as only daylight as I speak. Also, good insulation. We know that good insulation, we have to learn from the old, ancient buildings, where the building were always facing south and west. And why? Because they would have good lighting during winter and shade during summer. This is so important. We don't have to invent much. We just have to look back and see what was doing 300, 400 years ago. Also, we have managed to do all collective transport for our workers. So TMG provides buses for our workers to come into the premises so they don't have to use their own car. But again, during COVID, there was a bit of a drawback because of using one bus for 50 people. We're using a 50 people bus for 25 people. So there's always drawbacks because of this, hopefully, transitional period of COVID. But then we also looking for local supply whenever possible. And of course, we try to avoid as much as possible a single-use product within our premises. And when Pedro was saying that there was a decrease on investment, and we observed a global decrease on emissions during COVID, and it's understandable because there was a massive shutdown of the industry, we having now the opposite. We are facing with tons, a huge increase in single-use products, mainly in protective equipment, masks, gloves. Somebody, I was just reading the other day that there was more masks in the ocean than jellyfish by the end of the year. And this is an issue that should be a concern to us all. When we're talking about clean energy investment, of course, we always have to talk about money. And because the amount invested is still high and the efficiency from either solar or wind energy is still moderate or low, we have to be somehow patient. And someone just said, solar and wind have to be efficient. They don't have to be efficient. They just have to run over the course of time as long as we can pay the capital costs. Okay, Portugal has a lot of sun. We have some wind. So let's make a long time investment on solar energy. Of course, there's also the scarcity of land. Photovoltaic parks tend to take up a lot of space. We could try to put them in our roofs. We have to find a balance here, not just because of the cost, but because of the structure of the buildings to be able to hold on the solar panels. And also because we're putting two things onto the same place, we have to be very careful with risk of like a fire that could destroy both the plant and the energy source. We have to be very careful when addressing these issues. We do need to motivate our governments for a drive towards neutrality. We have to promote sustainable attitudes and we have to invest on education. We have to invest on education towards a society that consumes less, wastes less, towards a society that does an intelligent sourcing of their materials, and like Laura Costa just said. And of course, we have to look always at the opportunities. We have to look at the opportunities that all this can give us. And one good opportunity of clean energy is not beyond all the aspects leading with protecting the environment. And we also have to look that by using our own energy, we're not dependent on fossil fuel. And that is also very important. But we're also not dependent on the supply of our energy. So we are in control of what we produce. And this is important, as we've seen just now, because we're not so reliable, we're not so focused, it's not so dependent on market pressures, scarcity, even on energy disruption because of whether natural catastrophes or wars or conflicts, or whatever. So we are at TMG very much engaged in going towards our own production of energy, but doing this on a broad systematic approach, just not on the acquiring energy, but also on the way you use it. And of course, Portugal has been a good example on financial aids for companies to invest on cleaner energy. And I think we should all take a great advantage of that. And it's a good initiative. And I don't say I don't mean that we should just go for it because there's a subsidy, but as long as there's a subsidy to do it, let's take the best of it. So
Thank you.
That's what we'll be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Isabel. Jose, over to you. If you still remember the question.
Yes. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you also for the invitation for the participation of this event. So let me know about who we are. ADP Águas de Portugal is a publicly owned group of companies operating water supply and wastewater systems. ADP Group is the largest Portuguese public electricity consumer on the country. We consume more than 700 gigawatt hour per year, which is equivalent to around 1.4% of total electricity consumption in the country. So this is, for us, this is a huge economic cost for our operations and also a risk associated with the volatility and also the trends in the world energy markets. And undoubtedly also this means a huge greenhouse gas emissions, which represents around 200,000 pounds per year of CO2. So our fuel consumption, for instance, is almost 3 million liters per year, which represents an additional emissions around 8 tons of CO2 per year. So for us, it makes sense to commit to a low carbon business model, such as the full adoption of renewable energy, aiming at energy neutrality. Consumers and other stakeholders demand this commitment, and as well as demanding real actions, not only the commitment, but also real actions. This is a huge opportunity for us to promote more efficient solutions, taking advantage of the asset renewal cycle. Our asset renewal process is around 15 years in terms of equipment, and also promoting renewable energy production in our infrastructure. A straightforward way to match sustainable development goals, climate action objectives, and also industry, innovation, and affordable and clean energy as factors of territorial cohesion and polarization. Our operations are from the south to the north of the country, so this territorial cohesion for us is very important. It also represents an enormous opportunity to step up our business model, introducing people-centered technologies, and also promoting new skills and enforcing challenges towards teams to ADP companies. ADP neutrality objectives will be supported through renewable energy mix, small hydro power plants in our pipes, and also some wind power plants and photovoltaic power plants. We have also several biogas power plants in our water treatment plants that we are counting on. So all these endogenous resources are available on our own infrastructures or near around these infrastructures. Existing water supply tanks, and we run lots of these tanks all over the cities in the country. Are also these water supply tanks are also key assets in these programs. Why? Because we can use these water supply tanks in a different way, in terms of balancing not only water but also balancing energy. Which means that we can store on these tanks not only water but also excess electricity from renewable sources. So it's kind of you could look at these tanks like batteries, some kind of batteries. So in Nepal, which is ADP Group company, the energy neutrality program has already started, and we think that we are leading the Portuguese water sector on these aspects. Nepal is the biggest water supply Portuguese company and we supply around 34 municipalities in terms of bulk supply, and in Lisbon we supply around 350,000 direct to consumers. Our program was led by a multidisciplinary team from EPAL, with the support also from some leading companies and also some Portuguese institutions. All this team has produced this program, the energy neutrality program, which allows us to achieve energy neutrality by 2025. So by 2025, our goal is to reach energy neutrality 100%. We will use only our own energy. So we'll produce our own energy from renewable sources through the installations of hydroelectric power plants in our pipes. The first one is already on the erecting on the fields. Also some wind and photovoltaic power plants. This is a huge change. So most of all, this is a real commitment to the environmental, social, and economic sustainability. Also, will allow us to reducing the company exposure to energy markets fluctuation. Okay, nowadays the energy is very low, the market, but with when the COVID goes away, the energy will reach and will rise again, the price of energy. Last but not the least, we can ask, okay, but why this huge program of energy neutrality? What is the reason? Well, for us, the reason for this program is very simple. It just makes sense. We make money on this, but also it makes sense. Renewable and energy efficiency programs are economically, are socially, and environmentally cost effective. Thank you.
Thank you, José. We have 7 minutes, so we need to be extremely conscious of our use of time in the next 7 minutes. And I'm going to ask each one of you on this theme of radical collaboration, 1 minute, so you can highlight one aspect where you are collaborating with your value chain or with your clients or within your industry. One example of that radical collaboration that could inspire us all. Clara, 1 minute of something that is being done in OSHA.
1 minute is difficult, but I will try. Well, in collaboration, we use our we work always in partnership to clean energy. For example, when we put the photovoltaic plants, we work with the Alexia, for instance, or another Portuguese company. Or when we are monitoring and evaluating our consumption and our efficiency, we always work with EDP, that is a main partner, and of course to engage all the team about our goals. About our supply chain, it's very important to us to work with the local producers to reduce the size of the supply and impact, and in each we call it zone B or area region in Portugal, all the stores have autonomy to search to make sourcing for local producers to put in the stores, and that's a way of reduce our impact in the gas emission. Or when we work with our partners in transport to use constant renovation in the fleet, or to make some investments in technology to manage the supply chain. So it is always a network to collaborate.
Thank you very much. Great examples. Isabel, over to you. TMG or Cotec?
TMG. Okay. I think the most important thing is that working with the car industry, we have going through a revolution, but also setting an example. If we look at a very important directive, end-of-life directive by the European Community, at the moment, 85% has to be recyclable, 95% has to be recovered from a car. And this, of course, causes us a great challenge. Not just a challenge that we designed for performance, but also a challenge to producing circularity. Because we have within the car industry two main trends. One of them is electric mobility, and electric mobility requires from lighter material. So we actually have to do more with less. We have to use less material and produce more or produce better. And also with the car sharing, because with car sharing, you have to increase the useful life of the product, because it has to have properties that will make it last longer and more resistant. So if you just focus on those two trends, electric mobility, car sharing, and of course, with the directives from the European Community, we can do a lot, and we have a good challenge ahead. That's about it.
Thank you very much. José, one example from you in 1 minute.
Just in 1 minute, I will say that the most important for this huge change are people. Are not the technological things, not investment, not money, is people. So I just selected one example. In order to make this huge change on energy and renewable energy and reach the sustainable goals of zero emissions, you must have some teams with the right capacitation in terms of technical skills. So the example and our neutrality program, we reached this conclusion. Without the right formation, you cannot achieve any goal. So we designed a post-graduation course in Academia de Águas Livres, Academia de Águas Livres, that now it's open to the market, and we congregate around 11 institutions, like several universities, other Portuguese and international companies, to design and lectionate this course. And this is a course on renewable energy on the water sector. I think it's the first course that could take integrated information on the photovoltaic energy, but also on the biogas and also on the wastewater treatment and wind and electrical grids. So this is very, very important. You cannot reach any change without starting with the people. And for starting with the people, you must invest on the people and invest on the formation, capacitation of your people. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great example. I want to thank you all. I think we have heard very important things in this brief panel. We all had more things to say. I really want to highlight the value chain collaboration, the kind of bottom-up approach on climate action, and employee involvement that Clara mentioned. The importance of working in the circular economy that Isabel also focused now, and of course what you just said, the do it together, invest in people, train the employees. which actually shows that clean energy, climate action, all the SDGs are deeply connected. And when we act on one, we also need to act on all the others. And that is a condition of achieving long-term sustainability. I'm afraid we are at the end of our time. I want to say thank you to each one of you on behalf of UNGC and the Global Compact Network Portugal. Also want to say thank you for me to the Global Compact Network for inviting me. And I will now pass the word to Gonçalo Mota. Gonçalo is the head of unit for oceans, environment and energy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he will lead the next session on oceans. On my clock, there's 2 minutes to 12, so we are pretty much on time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Pedro, and thank you very much for your very efficient use of time. Indeed, you hand me over spare, which is really good. So I have to introduce my panel. Indeed, you did point out that the interconnectedness and the interlinkages between the SDGs are extremely relevant in this discussion. And timely, this first panel was focused on clean energy. I cannot stress more the importance of the choice of clean energy for the sustainability of the oceans. As we all know, the oceans are facing many pressures, and the most important pressure, or the one causing the most damage, is indeed global emissions, greenhouse emissions, and the consequential acidification of the oceans and the impact that this has on biodiversity, on ecosystems, and then in the end of this whole chain, the impact it has on us and our ability to live on this planet. So thank you very much for all the insightful interventions that we got from the panelists. It was indeed very good to know that not only action is being done on choosing new renewable energies to support their activities, but also a big, huge focus on improving energy efficiency. And this is also super important. I mean, the worst thing of energy production is wasting this energy production that is so costly to produce. So without further ado, I will introduce you my panel. We have 3 excellent experts this morning to talk about sustainability of the oceans. We have Professor António Nogueira Leite. He is a well-known professional in Portugal, a former Secretary of State for Treasury and Finance. So he will give us a tremendous insight about these issues. He's currently the president of Fórum Oceano. So he will be the first one to make his intervention. Then I will go to Daniel Traça. Daniel Traça is a Dean and Professor of Economics at Nova School of Business and Economics in Lisbon. He's also visiting professor at INSEAD in France and Singapore, and previously was assistant professor at INSEAD and held the Marie and Alan Philipson Chair in Managing for Sustainable Human Development at the Solvay in Brussels. Then I will go to Isabel Ucha. Isabel Ucha is the Chief Executive Officer of Euronext Lisbon. She will be representing the markets here, so I will post some interesting questions also relating to the reaction, how they see this important revolution for sustainability. And I will be having the pleasure of having Eric Gerski as an opening speaker to give his opening remarks, and Anabela Vaz Ribeiro to close up the session. Anabela Vaz Ribeiro is the Executive Director of Global Compact Network Portugal. and she will be giving us her final remarks. While we are waiting for Eric to join us, I will just give a small, very quick overplay of what we are going to do in this panel. I will ask a first general question to my panelists, to which I will ask them to give me the simplest, shortest response possible. Of course, the question is a little bit triggered, but then I'll ask specific follow-up questions and see if we can finish up on time by 1 o'clock. So my first question would be related to blue economy projects, and then my following up questions will be more specific to the fields of expertise of my panelists. I'm not sure if Eric can hear us, or if he's still not in. I can continue a little bit more. One of the most important issues that we're going to face in the next 10 years on the road to 2030 is achieving SDG 14. SDG 14 is composed of targets that can be measurable, easily measurable, but also composed of targets that are more political or diplomatic targets, where we have a little bit more difficulty in measuring the efficiency of achieving these targets. And work is being done to find a way to better measure the implementation of these targets. Some of the targets of the SDG 14 are due to expire this year. Of course, we are still lagging behind on implementation on these targets, and for sure we will need to raise our ambition and increase our dedication to the agenda and to SDG 14 if we are to achieve them. These targets are extremely important for sustainability of the oceans, and we cannot hold back more time in doing some action and actually improving our way of life. One of the most relevant interventions of this morning showed us that if you make the right choices, if you make the right bets, if you put the money where the mouth is, if you take the action, if you do what needs to be done, you actually get economic financial results. You can actually get an economic gain. So there are benefits to gain on this sustainability business. And it's important that not only governments, but also civil society, private sector, academia, all join in and collaborate and give us their contribution, either individually or in partnerships. It's always important to underline this aspect of the partnerships that we need to achieve true sustainability. As we all know, sustainable development incorporates 3 dimensions: economic, social, and environmental. And these have to be considered in an integrated manner, in a holistic manner. And this is the greatest single challenge that we have. I think it's very timely that we have this opportunity to have this discussion. And I will probably stop here. I'm not sure if my colleague Eric is already online. If it's not the case, I will probably kick off my debate with a question to all my panelists. Currently, what are the main challenges that you see, the main challenges and opportunities when trying to deploy investment in sustainable blue economic activities? I think it's important that we create an enabling environment, and we would like to know, from your point of view, what are the available options for investors to get involved in sustainable blue economy projects. And the first panelist is going to be Professor Antonio Nogueira. Professor, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the question. We'll in fact need different types of financing when we talk about sustainable oceans and investment ventures in making the ocean sustainable and being able to obtain value from our oceans. Why do I say different types of capital? Because some of the things that we have to do will not generate value immediately. For that, we need special kind of capital. A lot of it will be public capital or multinational public capital. That's why Europe has some programs that are devoted to this subject. But then we also have a lot of other areas in which the business opportunities are more mature. And in those circumstances, we are talking about usual sources of finance. We're talking about development capital. We're talking about the action of investment funds. We are attracting entrepreneurs that are willing to risk looking at the opportunities that are plentiful in the different areas of the ocean. And of course, we'll have the more traditional ways of financing. Debt financing will have even for some more mature ideas, we'll have the usual access to the markets. But what we need to know is that to be able to start really being efficient into creating value out of the potential that the ocean has, we have to look at very different types of capital. We have to be able to interest sometimes partners that do not have exactly the same horizon in terms of how they see the business opportunity. And therefore, this is an area where clearly we need to use all sorts of resources that we may have. In a country like Portugal, for example, to go to the reality that I know best, we do not have a lot of capital devoted to this area. Even though we have, in a broader sense, large investments in this area, because if you think of exploring the potential of the ocean as the ability to use ocean conditions to generate power, then we have a lot of capital invested. We have Portuguese firms that are leaders worldwide in terms of establishing projects in offshore wind. And they are slowly moving into the deeper shores, like the ones in our coast, where we have some projects that are starting to work and that are very different from what we can see either in the Baltic Sea, part of the North Sea, or even in Scotland or Brittany, because we're talking about very deep ocean, and the ability to have the wind towers working in situations which are very different from the ones that we had 15, 20 years ago, for example, off the coast of Denmark. This is one thing. We're looking at wave energy. We're looking at the mineral resources that we have underneath the ocean. These are typically very different businesses. They are at very different stages. Some are just an idea. Others are actually already working. And for those different kinds of businesses, as I said in the beginning, we need different types of capital. We need different types of promoters, and we also need different types of alliances. Because if you're thinking about, for example, the deep ocean floor in the Azores, we're not talking about something that is going to generate value in the next 1 or 2 decades. We're talking about something that will generate value in the longer term. And of course, for that, we need very different types of capital than, for example, the capital that is being deployed by quoted companies in exploring wind energy or other sources of energy in the ocean. So we have to be aware that we're really looking at the world of opportunities that are that can be useful and can be an opportunity for very different types of agents, very different types of finance. and that are at very different stages in terms of the business development of the different projects.
Thank you very much, Professor. Indeed, there are traditional types of finance, and then there are these extremely capital-intensive investments in projects that really have a hard time in raising capital for their venture. And so we need to look at the specifics of each business to see what type of finance should we look out for. Danielle, what are your views on this? What challenges and opportunities from your side do you think there are there and that we can tap into? Danielle, are you on mute?
So, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Apologies. The point I was making is I think there are two elements to look at the oceans. One is what we are doing. The other one is what we should be doing, what we ought. And I think the critical element here is what is amazing is we probably know more and we're doing more in space than we are doing in the oceans at this point. And that's actually an interesting thing to explore, and I'll come back to it. So what are we doing now? And what we're doing is we're looking at a few industries, quite interesting, and Antonio just picked up some of that. But, you know, we talk about tourism, we talk about ports, we talk about clean energy, we talk about some of these issues. And these are things where, as Antonio said, these are things that are very important now. And of course, the oceans are particularly very important for Portugal. We've had a chance of addressing this. We did a study with the Luso-American Foundation at the school, and with the direction with the Secretary General for the Oceans here in Portugal. And what we found is that you look at issues like agriculture, you look at issues like tourism, issues like ports, you look at issues like energy, and the constraints that come are the same. And Antonio mentioned one is capital, but also many of them raise bureaucratic issues. And when you have an issue like the ocean, which is all about commons, which is all about basically taking care of something that belongs to everybody, bureaucratic regulations needs to be very efficient and needs to at the same time protect the oceans, but not shy away private interests, which needs to stable, well-oiled system, right? So in terms of what we do about the ocean today, I would highlight the finance, and I'm not going to go into it because Antonio just explained all the challenges I had, but I'll also add the bureaucratic issues that we need to do. When you're taking care of something that is the ocean, we need to basically make sure that governments regulates it, but regulates it in a way that allows the private sector to come in a sustainable, but also in a profitable. But I would say that the biggest challenge is not just the bureaucratic, is not just the finance, is vision. I think when you look at what is happening in space, when you look at what is, the way people like Elon Musk are looking at a new vision to explore this in a way that is sustainable, these people lead the way to a new age. And we need some of that to happen for the oceans. It's remarkable that we would not have had electric cars had it not been for this man's vision of starting it, and then others followed. And I think we're now doing it in space. And by the way, now it's the private sector and the energy and the vision that is leading that in space. We're not seeing that in the oceans. We're seeing a few companies doing stuff that we know should be done, looking for capital, looking for some support. I think we need more. We need vision. We need ambition, and we need to actually bring in bold people that can help us bring the final frontier. The final frontier is not space. The final frontier is the ocean. And if we can actually find ways of encouraging visionary people, not just companies that have a return on the stock market that need to deliver in 3 months, but we need to bring the visionary people into the oceans not just to do new stuff, but to do new stuff with. And I think that is the element of people that I think is also lacking, in addition to all the constraints that were raised before.
Thank you, Daniel. Very good words. I would pick out the bureaucracy regulation point. Really good on that. We fully agree that regulation needs to be improved. And I think the opportunity to collaborate with the private sector and the stakeholders of these regulations is to be taken and fully taken advantage of. Isabel, good morning. Can you give us your views on what opportunities, what challenges, what constraints do you see from the side of the markets to engage on the sustainable blue economy project?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Gonçalo. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here today also with Professor Daniel Traça and Professor António Nogueira Leite. Indeed, financial markets and capital markets have a very critical role to play in promoting clean energy and sustainable oceans. It is, in a recent report issued by the European Commission, and just to start with the figure, 1.5 trillion euros will be needed. It's just a report on May and after COVID, so with some updates, will be needed to finance and to achieve the climate-related goals of the Paris Agreement. And 1.5 trillion is really a lot of money, and it's not going to be only government and European Union money. It will have to be a lot of private money of different sources, as it was said, to be able to reach these objectives. And capital markets, indeed, they put together, lots of people who have lots of savings to be invested in businesses and in activities that will bring, the sustainable investments that we all need in the oceans and the ambitions that have been just mentioned. And the first idea I would like to leave here is that each one of us, with our own savings, can make a difference in these investments, because we now have options to invest in products, in financial products, and I will give some examples just to make it clear. Can invest in products, in financial products that have very specific and detailed and sectorial criteria in terms of supporting the climate objectives and the investments on the water and ocean initiatives. So when we go into the bank or into the, we talk with our, pension fund manager or with our investment advisor, we should ask, where are they investing our money and what is the criteria that they are using to put our money in these different funds. The good news, and another interesting number, is that there are already a lot of investors, many investors, probably like many of us listening to us today, who are already investing their funds in their money in ESG or sustainable investment funds, and even water and ocean related investment funds. And I will go into the detail on that as well. Just to give you an idea, in 2019, the total amount of funds which have this kind of criteria has doubled, so has increased 100%. And from the first few months of 2020, the trend it continues to be a very high level of growth in this kind of investments. But the question is, can exchanges, stock exchanges, and market infrastructures and the finance industry in general accelerate this process? And the answer is of course yes, because we can provide solutions and products for investors to choose where their money goes to. And I will start by indices and funds. One of the major trends in financial markets recently is on passive investment. So you all know that most of us, more than 90% of all investments done these days goes into funds that replicate indices, so portfolios of stocks of different companies which have a particular condition.
Yeah.
So, for example, Euronext launched the first low carbon 100 index, which tracks the companies, the 100 companies in Europe that have the lowest carbon intensity in a balanced portfolio of different sectors, and which now has almost 800 million euros tracking this index. So any one of us can invest in an exchange traded fund, what we call an ETF. So it's a fund that replicates this low carbon 100 portfolio, and which will deliver the objectives of the Paris alignment strategies, because we just reviewed the rules in order to make the index compliant with a 7% year-on-year reduction on CO2 emissions. So the portfolio together has to comply with this rule. It has to, the second rule is it has to reflect the 1.5 degrees limit on temperature rise, and it excludes by 2050, and it excludes fossil fuel companies. So this is just an example of a low carbon index, which is the highest, the biggest ETF in Europe. But I will give you another example, which is more specific to the water and oceans index business, which is the Water and Ocean Europe 40. We have just developed an index that selects out of the 500 biggest companies in Europe, the 40 companies that mostly contribute to SDG 6, so water and sanitation, and SDG 14, life below water. So investors can also invest in structured products or ETFs or funds that replicate this kind of indices. And we have a large offer of more than 50 ETFs tracking 25 billion of assets under management in 2019. It is not yet huge, so there is a lot more that can be done. And I believe that at the rate that this kind of investment are growing, this is becoming really mainstream and will push investments on the right direction. The other example, very briefly, that I would like to give in this first round of questions is regarding bonds. So on the bond markets, there has also been a very interesting development in offering green bonds, social bonds, sustainability bonds, and more recently, Euronext has been working with the United Nations in developing the bond ocean principles and the bond ocean standards. And we are this week opening an offering for listing these blue bonds, which we expect will help to promote investment in this particular area, which we are so keen in helping. We also signed, by the way, when we developed these principles, the 9 United Nations Ocean Principles. So we are the first and only exchange to have signed this principle. So on the bond area, there is also a lot of options. And finally, on the stocks, if you anyone can invest in our, for example, in our clean tech sector, we have dedicated a full range of services and information regarding clean tech companies, which many of them are just energy, clean energy and ocean energy related. We have.
I'm waiting. Hello.
Coming in. Hi, good morning, Isabel.
Yes,
welcome.
Can you hear me?
I hope you have been listening.
Can you hear me, Gonçalo?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. We still have Eric missing. He's waiting to get in before me.
Okay.
From the Ocean Business Platform.
I was losing hope that we could hear our friend Eric this morning. So if Eric is available, we can go directly to him.
Yes, please.
Just waiting a few moments for Mr. Gierke to log in. Eric is a skilled professional in international relations. He is currently working with UN Global Compact.
Okay.
On Sustainable Ocean Action Platform. Hi, Eric. Welcome.
Hello.
Good
Can
morning.
you hear me?
Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Good to see you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly, loud and clear. I will give you the floor right now so you can make your intervention. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. We are running a bit late on time, so I'll keep the ocean platform of the UN Global Compact in a nutshell. Gladly, I've been listening in to the great interventions from the panel, and I would just, talk about the platform in a way that echoes all the inputs we had so far today. This is really about collaboration, because when you talk about ocean-related industries, what is sustainability? We don't really know. That is something we have to define together. We have to define it together with scientists, with governments, the UN, and of course the private sector. And what we saw initially is that there is a real drive within the private sector itself to be on the right side of history, to have a constructive role in delivering on the 17 SDGs. Of course, number 14 is the core of it. Do no harm to the ocean, make a healthy ocean thrive. But also we know that we can use the ocean in delivering more food, more energy, more economic trade and exploration if we do it right. And this last part, if we do it right, has been very essential for the industry and the science to really understand this. We have 150 coastal states. They all have their own ocean economy. They all have their own local regulations. What we need is more collaboration to create a level playing field for the businesses so that investors, stock markets, banks know that they're not entering into risky business. We don't want that. The businesses don't want that. We want to de-risk our impact on the ocean. And we can do that if we do it right. So that's why we, only a few months ago, September last year, launched the Sustainable Ocean Principles that Isabel mentioned. They are the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact translated for the ocean. What is your impact on the ocean? Do you have a strategy on it? And do you disclose this action? This is very important information in the market. And then a few weeks ago, we launched the Ocean Stewardship 2030 report. What are the key tipping points for us to really deliver healthy ocean and a productive ocean in 2030? It's about sustainable seafood, traceable, sustainable seafood. It's about renewable energy. We have enough energy out there if we do it right and invest right. And green shipping, a major issue. Very hard, but now companies are coming out saying they're only gonna produce zero emission ships by 2030. It's a huge step for the industry. And then at the same time, we have to bring and internalize in the economy zero waste management. And lots of technology companies are looking into this. And at the dawn of the decade of ocean science, we also need broad collaboration between science and companies. And we have the experience only, just in our platform. We have SEA from Portugal, we have MIT, Harvard, Stockholm's Resilience Center, together with large companies coming together, looking at concrete solutions that can scale up and deliver a sustainable ocean for a sustainable planet. So that is the key work. We launched the Blue Bond reference paper together with Euronext and all the largest banks in the world. We think we need to internalize these ambitions into the market mechanism so that companies get recognition when they invest in the right direction. That is the promise. And this is what we're going to look at more when we meet in Portugal next year on the beach of Cascais and in the meeting halls of Lisbon. We will look at, I'm sure by then, and we are working with different actors, by then we will have private equity funds only on sustainable oceans. We will have blended mechanisms together with the World Bank system. We will have Euronext list of water and ocean and many concrete initiatives to drive this agenda. And that is what we do. That is real collaboration, is to turn this into action, as Gutierrez said. This is the decade of action and delivery. So thank you, Gonzalo, for giving me the floor at this very end of your session, which I thought was extremely inspiring. And congratulations on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric. Good to hear your final words. It should have been the opening words, but not a big problem because you actually pointed out a lot of good things and good projects that you're doing. Would like to also give a big call for support to the Sustainable Ocean Principles. It's really important that all the stakeholders, government, civil society, private sector join in and adhere to this important list of principles. So I'll give the floor to Isabel now, just to give us her final remarks on behalf of Global Compact Portugal. Isabel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Gonçalo. Well, I believe we had a very productive session with different voices from different stakeholders, lots of content, and even some of our speakers. Well, I just would like to say that over the recent years, under Lais Kingo's leadership, Global Compact has advanced to a more impactful initiative, grounded on the 10 principles as Kofi Annan designed, and we are very happy to see that. But now we are on a different stage. We are on a stage where we need more action, more impact. We need to add this to the purpose of the 10 principles of Global Compact. So now, 20 years past, we invite all of you to live up to this as they stay very current in our lives. And we like to thank you to the companies program of Global Compact, the Business Ambition 1.5, because Portuguese companies represent now 10% of all the companies that joined the initiative. And we think this is really, really great. Thank you for all of them. I hope we have some of them listening at this moment. Well, that said, we have come to an end of our session, but as Eric said also, we are at the beginning of the decade of action and delivery. So our action and our efforts are most needed to keep up the pace. So please become a leading company and join Global Compact for the world that we want. Thank you all for participating, and a special thank you for our distinguished speakers and facilitators like Pedro and Gonçalo from CDP and Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Happy 20th anniversary.
Thank you very much, Isabel, for your final words. I would just close this, before I close the session, I would just like to extend a big thank you to all my panelists. Excellent insight and information. And just to give all of you listening and seeing us around the world, we invite you to participate, to engage, to collaborate and contribute to the conference on oceans that we're going to host in Lisbon. Please stay tuned to the developments. We'll soon be giving more information, but don't be shy, engage, collaborate, do partnerships, and let's work together to achieve sustainability by 2030. SDG 14, go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
much. See you guys.
Okay.